The sins of my youth. This is a story of a very unfortunate man. Don't get me wrong, I'm taking the man role. Today is the day set for my son's 21st birthday, but we are gathered to mourn his death. I am looking at his lifeless body with its pale skin and shut eyes. I'm fighting back the tears and trying hard to steady my quickened frame. The sorrow in my heart is heavier than the coffin where his corpse lies, waiting to be lowered 6 feet under the ground. His lips are slightly parted. It looks as though he wants to tell me about the things he never got to talk to me about. Not the things I failed to give ears to. I know there's so much he always wanted to tell me, but I never had the time to listen. I was always on the move. It was always one business trip or another. His countenance displays before me the image of my younger years and the folly of my youth. I recall the words of Job in the Bible, and he said, "His bones shall be filled with the vices of his youth, and they shall sleep with him in the dust." I am the man Job spoke about. When I met Mirabel, his mother, we were both young and naive. Her innocence was the charm that drew me to her. She was pretty and with the kinky hair and the round face. A birthmark sat around her left eye, adding another shade of black to her peanut butter truffle skin tone. She seemed to complement my quick temper with her calm demeanor. And oh, how she loved me. Her love didn't last 2 years as I, almost out of impulse, and maybe to satisfy my wild lusts and fierce passions, left her for another girl, then another, and another, till I lost count. I became the ladies' man, the Casanova of my time. They flocked around me without a care, and I lavished my money with reckless abandon too. I am the son of a wealthy merchant in Calabar, a town in the northern province of Sierra Leone. My grandfather was the son of a former slave who, upon freed in the early 20th century, returned home and was crowned the king of Limba chiefdom. Later on, he will send my father Saika to England to be trained as a medical doctor. My father went to England and decided to build for himself a career as a businessman instead. But by the time he returned to Sierra Leone, he had saved enough money and built connections with other merchants in England. He became a big name in the mining circles, where he was one of the major private individuals that were exporting iron ore and diamonds to Europe. I grew up in the midst of affluence. My father was not at home most of the times. My mother was also working with the civil service in Freetown. I was raised by a nurse who was more interested in spending time with her boyfriends that regularly came to the house than about taking care of me. Soon, I outgrew the need for a nurse. I threw a caution to the wind when my mother finally succumbed to cancer and died 6 months later. By then, my father had decided we moved to England permanently, but I refused. So he left without me. I never lacked because he always sent more than enough money. Mirabelle never got through the trauma of our parting. She turned a shadow of herself. She became half demented or pretended to be so. Her once chubby self was reduced to a fragile skin stretched over bones. Whenever our paths managed to cross, and it seldom did, she would become so angry and streams of tears would almost immediately begin to flow out of her now sunken eyes. She took to alcohol and in Sierra Leonean local gin, Omoli. And as much as I tried to avoid her, though we had a fruit age of our history that kept our memories together alive. About 2 months after I left her, she sent a letter informing me that she had my baby growing inside of her. Despite my letters persuading her to abort the child, she remained firm over her decision to keep the child. At last, she had him. He was in many ways a replica of me. She named him Frederick against my wish. When her parents insisted that she asked me to come and take custody of the child, since he had been weaned already and was ready for nursery school, I was more than willing to do so. She didn't let go of the child that easy because she also loved him, but she had to. Moreover, she was almost always not sober, so much for a nursing mother. Sadly, she never got married. I continued with my womanizing and later got married to marry a Mandigo woman. At least, I needed a mother for my fast-growing son, and Mirabelle was half damaged to become my wife at this point. When our first child was barely 4 years old, she left with him. I would later discover that she made away with all the golden watches and rings my father had sent me over the years to go to Freetown with her former boyfriend. For 15 years, I had to raise Frederick alone. Because of my experiences with a nanny, I never kept on. Frederick, like me, also grew up without the watchful eyes of a father. Since I had to manage a new firm my father had started in Calabar. Brima, for that was the name of my second son, got to return home few years later. He was now 16. When he pressured his mother to return home to his father, she wouldn't deny him for so long. By this time, Frederick was away studying in the prestigious Fora Bay College in Freetown. Mirabelle, still burning with hatred for me, decided she would get back to me through my son. Of course, I never knew her plans. Taking advantage of my absence and the fact Brima was still an impersonable boy, she befriended him, telling him I am a former friend, and supplied him books that she hoped would police and ruin him. She longed to destroy my son, body, soul, and spirit. She would lure him into taking long walks with her, where she would ignite his fantasy and excite his imaginations with tales of murder and robbery, and drugs also. Sadly, her tactics worked, and I lost my son to riotous living. He became a highway robber. It was during one of his operations that he shot a lone stranger on a lonely road one dark night. The stranger turned out to be Frederick. He was returning home from a short break 3 months before his graduation. Because the bus he took developed mechanical faults on the road, he ended up having to arrive Calabar quite late at night. Coincidentally, The murder was done under circumstances that were identical to one of those described in one of the criminal novels that Mirabel gave to him. Bremer has been arrested and he is likely to spend the rest of his life in jail. I am left to mourn two sons because of the sins of my youth. Mirabel, on the other hand, dug a pit, and her only son, my son, has fallen into it.